That you should now be able to see my screen. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all good.
And now we're going to go to 4.5, and we're going to wonder whether this was clear or not.
I do think it's clear. I don't know if I said it was or not. But.
I think you did. I think I'm the only one that didn't.
Yeah.
It seems pretty clear to me.
It seems pretty clear to me. There might have been some unclarity. She said she was seeing some of the things more clear than others.
Yeah.
But I think that's still counts as clear. All right, then we're on to number 5.1.
God, it's me. Did I have a sleep for this one?
Well, it's not you. You and I agreed on whether there was not skillful clarity. 5.1, skillful clarity.
Oh, the logo is not detailed. I think it's skillful clarity. Like she sees it enough that it's recognizably the brand, but she can't clearly see the letters Faye or whatever.
So this is one of those which I think it's a matter of interpretation. If she was just, this was about yogurt, but it wasn't about the brand of yogurt. I guess that would count as skillful clarity. She was hiding from herself so I'm willing to go for skillful clarity.
I think it was clearly this brand, but like just recognizably enough to be that brand with the elements of the logo, but she didn't so much need to spell out all the letters. Actually, I don't know why.
So the question is, what's at stake here? If we call it skillful clarity, if we call this skillful clarity, then we could say about just about anything that isn't clear, this is skillful clarity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a mistake, because skillful clarity, and like my example last time of the girl with the bra and the boy with no face, that was clearly skillful, and this is not clearly skillful like that.
Okay,
yeah, I hear what you're saying, Julian. I think it's that, but I think it's so low on the scale. Like, I agree with you. I think, she has hidden the yogurt brand, so there's some aspect, but like on the scale of 1 to 10 of her skillful clarity there, I reckon it's so minor.
Okay, I'm not wedded to it. I just feel like by the criteria we've been using so far, it does fall into that, but I'm not.
So the part of this exercise, a major part of this exercise, is refining the criteria that we've been using. And so what it looks like we are saying here is that this is not just any partial unclarity. There has to be some.
For me, it's like when she talked about it, she was like, it clearly was this brand of yogurt. It was the Faye brand, and she put in enough visual elements that it clearly was, like it was the blue and red diamond whatever, but like I guess she didn't need, like it was superfluous to spell out, to really see the letters or whatever.
Right, and that's what makes it not skillful to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think then it's clear, but the skillful clarity aspect for me is more if there's like great meaning attached to leaving something out. So like, she has technically left something out because it's not necessarily relevant, but I don't think that's enough for skillful clarity definition, personally.
Okay, well, I'm fine keeping it as 0 or 0.5 or whatever.
So I said this was clear.
Yeah, I think this is quite clear. At the very least, I think it's a 0.5, which I haven't.
Partly clear, but not every part is clear.
So I think it seems to me that maybe what we should refine, and we have been refining but haven't really spelled it out, is what clear means is there's part of this image that's clear. part of this image that's clear. That's what clear means, I think. Everybody agree with that?
Okay. Well,
So we can change this to clear. So it is not just a vague it's not just a vague thing.
Yeah.
You buy that?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, then I would call it clear.
And if that's the case, we're going to call this clear.
Yeah.
Because there are some interseeings where just nothing is articulated. And that's different from this, it seems to me. So now we get to the inner speaking. Is there any inner speaking, any kind of speaking? This category is speaking that's not inner of any kind.
To me, the fact that she couldn't even say who was saying it shows that it was probably outside of experience.
I agree. The fact that it started with a perhaps, I'm not into it.
But I feel like we've been doing it, like we'll still label this as speaking, but then we'll also label it as speaking outside of awareness. I think that's what we decided on.
But I don't like that either, though, because it says perhaps Kerry was saying it, or perhaps it was her brother. Like, there's no...
But I feel like we agree it was probably outside of awareness. But last time we decided any speaking was just like, if it was inside or outside of awareness, we would put it there. But then we also made that other category, speaking outside of awareness.
Yeah, I remember that, but I'm not even sold on that because the description says perhaps it was Kerry, perhaps it was her brother. So I think that's even beyond outside of awareness. She's not even sold on if someone was talking or who it was.
Well, I got a couple of comments about that. One is our job is not to describe the description. We're not to rate the description. We're trying to remember what actually happened in the sample. So the fact that we wrote perhaps that is designed to be a tool that takes us back to the sample as best we can do it. But I'm agreeing with your sentiment. I think what's happened is that she was not sure whether she was talking aloud or whether her brother was talking aloud. Somebody was saying yogurt, but who it was, she wasn't sure. So now the question is, does that count as speaking? In my head, I would say perhaps, but I'm going to give it a 0.5. But this is one of those where if you give it a 0, then you forget that there was a sample where she's not even sure whether it's she herself is speaking, which seems sort of interesting.
Yeah, on that count, I'll award a 0.5.
Does that convince you?
I'm fine with 0.5. But then I think it was outside of awareness.
It's definitely outside of awareness then, yeah.
But then for that category, do we do it a 1 or 0.5? Then I get a little confused.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think, didn't we discuss that category is only a 1 or a 0? Or not?
This category here, is that what we're talking about?
No, the outside of awareness, not that one. The green one. I don't know.
No, I can see that.
Because it's sort of either in your awareness or it's not.
Yeah.
Except that we're not sure about it here.
Yeah, I know. All right, well.
So from my point of view, this exercise that we're engaged in now is more about understanding Kerry than it is about getting the right numbers into blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that we're probably pretty much in agreement about Kerry, this sample.
Yeah.
There was somebody who was saying yogurt, and maybe it was Kerry, maybe it was somebody else. We're not sure, but I think we agree about that. And the numbers that we're putting into the blocks are trying to get us to be able to say that if and when the time comes for us to say it.
Okay.
So
Wait, so what's that speaking other than semantic? Why have you got a 0.5 on that?
Uh, other than semantic. That's Russ's point.
That's Russ.
So what's the difference between...
In that category, you've got speaking other than semantic. But this is semantic, isn't it? Because she knows someone's saying yoga,
Yeah.
but she can't work out who it was.
Yeah, I agree. This should be a blank.
Yeah. The question is in our green category. That's going to have something. Do we
Maybe
think
just
that
a-
the yogurt was inside or outside the awareness?
I think it was outside. Maybe just a 1, even if the speaking is 0.5, to say that if it was there, it was outside.
Yeah, I sort of agree.
I don't care, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay.
I feel like we agree on the experience. Brother Imam saying caramel.
Sensory awareness. Not caramels.
So I think this is sensory awareness.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So this should be a 1.
Yep. Didn't work. Yep.
And
Yes, I overlooked that.
we're all over the... as far as skillful clarity is involved. So I think we're talking about this.
Okay. I could
Well,
see
I
the
was
case.
also interested. Yeah, okay, maybe this comes back to the definition of skillful clarity, but with the close-upness and the detailed texture of the hair and stuff, to me felt like some aspect of skillful clarity. But I hear what we're talking about. That's not in line with what we were saying before about meaning associated with blurring certain aspects out and stuff. She disproportionate. Yeah, I mean, regardless, that bit definitely is skillful clarity.
So it's pretty clear to me that this is not skillful clarity in the center of the target definition of that. But there's something that's sort of skillful about putting some salon stuff in there but not arranging it, and there's something that's skillful about that. That's what we tried to convey by this.
See that?
And whether we should call that skillful clarity or whether we should make up another category.
Elements, but not a whole scene.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with skillful
Call it
clarity.
0.5.
Yeah, sure, that's made in the middle. I'd say 0.5. Yep.
Clear, and then clear, it is clear by our new
It's
definition.
definitely clear by our definition.
Yeah.
New definition of clear.
What's that one?
Any speaking.
What was she speaking?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, the caramel.
She's saying caramel.
Yep.
yeah, and that is an awareness,
Yep.
I think.
So we're done with this one?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh wow, there's a lot of disagreement on this one. Oh yeah, I remember this.
We had quite a bit of...
This one was wild.
This was just a messy sample.
So is she inner speaking?
To me, this was inner hearing. Like she's imagining herself inner speaking, but her experiences of hearing this imagined self speaking, which makes it more hearing.
I start to get really lost on these distinctions for this. They feel really fine. Saying not as speaking it, but also simply not as hearing herself. I don't know, it just sounds
To me,
confused.
this was written confusingly when you said, but there's no experience hearing by either the imaginer or the imagined Kerry. Because to me, the imaginer is hearing, like the imagined Kerry speaking.
So as a general rule, which I feel pretty strongly about keeping with unless we change our mind, and that is the general rule has been in my work, if there is hearing that is part of an inner seeing,
Mm-hmm.
it does not count as separable inner hearing. We in my lab have had long debates about that and recognize that it's sort of arbitrary and so arbitrarily we have said. So, let's say I'm innerly seeing the Philadelphia Orchestra play Beethoven's Fifth, and I can hear the Beethoven's Fifth along with it. But I don't say this is inner hearing. I say this is inner seeing, and then I embellish that by saying, well, I was also hearing what I was seeing.
So what's your main rationale for that?
Because if you mark it as inner hearing, then it puts it into the same category as I was walking down the street, I heard Beethoven's Fifth playing in my head, and I've been hearing that all day. I don't see anything, but I'm hearing it. And that, it seemed to us, was a longer way away the hearing as a detail of the seeing seems sort of close to the seeing to us, whereas the hearing as its own thing seemed like a long way of having some hearing be part of a seeing. And I accept that there's something that's very arbitrary about that, but I would be loath for me to change that now, given that that's how I've counted it, to the extent that I think counting is important. That's how I've counted it for quite a long time.
If that's how you do it, that's how you do it. If you've had long discussions, I don't feel like we need to have those, but I think we should somehow mark so we can at least remember this was something different somehow.
So what's different is that she sees herself saying. And so this one is even stronger than my Beethoven's Fifth example, because
But to me, it's stronger than she sees the camping scene and also hears birds chirping. That one I could really see why you wouldn't count that as in your hearing. But this one, it seems quite close because she's hearing words. She's hearing herself speak them, and they are clear and unambiguous.
Gosh, it's a tricky one, because I sort of understand in Russ's definition now of the seeingness. I sort of understand looking at it from that angle.
This one is difficult from the perspective that I talked about a little bit ago with Beethoven, but it's also I'm not convinced that there is any hearing at all in this sample, whether inner or not.
So that's a different thing then.
That is a different thing. That's right. And I'm not sure that she was capable of making that distinction. But so she was imagining herself. She's imagining herself saying 30 is not so bad. Yeah. But I'm not sure that she hears herself saying that. I think it's quite possible that she is somehow recognizing herself as saying that, but it's not a heard thing and it's not a spoken thing.
It could be like an unsymbolized kind of thing, or I guess it is symbolized because she's seeing herself, but
yeah, there's just no
and
audio.
There conceptually, but not heard.
Yeah.
In a way, it's sort of like I imagine myself seeing Mickey Mantle swinging the bat, but there's no swinging involved. I see Mickey Mantle with a bat.
Yeah.
And the swinging is implied. It's understood. I understand him, but I don't see it. and this one, I think I was never sure that we as in Kerry and the rest of us probably understood that distinction.
Well, what if we just make it a 0.5?
So what are we talking about specifically? Whether we think there was inner hearing. Well, I said 0.5, but Russ is just very convincing.
So convincing. But I still think it's still possible that she was, like, there's room for uncertainty, but also room for possibility.
This is the kind of thing where where a 0.6 or a 0.4 would be better than 0.5 because it calls your attention to this sample.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to call this a 0.5.
Yeah, okay.
Would you ever do 0.4s or 0.6s or something?
I don't usually, but I'm tempted to a lot. And this is a sample. I think the length of the purple discussion indicates to us we need to describe this better.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is an interesting sample. Put it that way. We haven't figured it out.
Well, I think it's a good, demonstration of we can all do our best and get very clear on certain experiences, both Kerry and us, and then sometimes there are still phenomena which are bloody tricky to understand.
Right. So we gave this a 0.5. Do we want to give the inner speaking a 0 or a 0.5?
Let's see.
Yeah, I'm okay with 0, I think.
Yeah.
And then sensory awareness. Julian didn't see sensory awareness.
Wait, the rug?
Yeah.
I'm fine with 0.5, actually.
Yeah.
I think I might have just overlooked it.
And then I gave this some skillful clarity. I wonder why I did that.
The people off to the sides, but they're indistinct, maybe?
Yeah, probably. But this is more or less close to the fee
Yeah, the yoga.
yogurt thing.
Correct.
So I'm happy to leave this as not skillful clarity here.
Up to you.
The most interesting thing about this, well, there's a lot of interesting things about this. If we really understood this sample, we would know a lot about how inner experience actually works. Like what's the deal with I experience this as a recollection?
Oh yeah.
I thought she was pretty clear about that. This is like I'm remembering an event that's in the future.
Except
I feel myself to be remembering.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. But I also wondered if it was more of just a comparison or a metaphor. Just that, does she mean that it's a clear scene and she sees a scene and she sees herself, or did she mean that there's a special memory kind of judge that makes it feel more memory-ish? Like, I don't know.
That memory judge.
The memory judge.
My impression was that she experiences this in the same way as she experiences a memory.
Yeah.
So if I'm remembering 9/11, I experience that as remembering 9/11. And she's experienced. I understood her to be saying, I experienced this as if it had already happened, even though it hadn't already happened. And we don't have a category for that.
It's very interesting there.
But it is interesting. And so by our new definition of clarity, this is clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And sensory awareness of color. If we gave this a sensory awareness, we should have given this a sensory awareness of color.
Yeah. Why did I put something other than color.
Well, it could have been the pattern.
Oh,
This
yeah,
was
I was thinking pattern. I think that's what I was.
well, I'd be happy to go with
Blue
that.
one.
Call this a 0.5.
Yeah.
And this a
I think
0.5.
it's such a detailed scene with, like, it's not just the rug, it's also the friends and the chain and this and that.
Right.
I think that's what made me kind of hesitate too.
If we ever want to describe Kerry, we're going to have to describe her visual imagery. And this is going to be one of the examples that we would want to describe about the complexity or the variability or interesting aspects, or however you want to phrase it, of her visual imagery. Onward, we're at 8.2.
Okay,
This is the one where I'm pushing the door. We're never going to agree about that.
So we thought maybe sensory
I don't think
awareness
we ever
could be
understood
there,
it.
sure.
Where is this 8.2? Maybe sensory awareness.
In the notes, my note here was that it could also be doing, like she's pushing the bike. Maybe it's more about pushing, not jamming hands, than the coldness of the handlebars.
That's where all these question marks came from, I think. Because I couldn't figure out during the meeting whether her experience at the beep was I'm pushing it. But when I look back at it, those handlebars were cold, and therefore I must have been experiencing the coldness of it. And I never figured that out, as I recall it.
Yeah, I agree. I never felt like super confident about all of that. So
0.5.
despite when I put this
0.5.
number in, apparently I felt confident, but I'll make you a 0.5 for this.
Skillful clarity.
Seeing.
So this is the same, from my point of view, this is the same deal as was it a beauty shop with things arranged?
Yeah.
From my perspective, like, how do we know that this isn't just, in a minute, she might have seen more things or might have been filling in the scene?
Well, yeah, we never know that, though. I think this is skillful clarity. I agree with Russ. I've missed this, but I think it's the same as that.
Okay.
So maybe we need to call it something other than clarity. It's skillful indeterminacy. How does that grab you?
Sure.
You buying that, Mel?
I'd like another word.
Ambiguity.
I don't mind that, actually, even though it feels like an oxymoron, but skillful ambiguity is kind of cool.
So the examples that we've got are it's not ambiguous. Sometimes it's ambiguous.
Yeah, but it's not always.
Like the arrangement of pieces. I got some pieces from the beauty shop, and I've got stuck them in there.
Yeah, that's not ambiguous. It's
I actually don't feel like we'll come up with better than clarity. We could try.
Well, why don't we leave it as clarity? To remind us, and then if somebody comes up with a better word, we can figure it out.
Okay.
yeah.
And then we're going to give that a 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unusual perspective.
So we built the unusual perspective category to deal with the yurt. I'm seeing the yurt from behind me.
Yeah, I don't know where I feel like this is a mistake. I'm not sure where I'm getting that from.
Okay.
I guess maybe that was capturing that it's different elements, but it doesn't put them in perspective as a full scene.
Yeah, I honestly just think that's a mistake.
Okay.
It's easy to
Yeah.
make mistakes in it.
Clear enough.
Say it's at least partially clear by our definition.
Yeah.
Ah.
You've done it again.
So how did I do that? I went like that. That went away. And then I did Control Z to put it back, which it still is blank. All right. And then we got sensory awareness other than color. Oh, that was whether the coldness was a sensory awareness thing.
Oh, yeah.
0.5?
Yeah, 0.5 is fine, yeah.
And then multiple.
I could buy a multiple.
This has got to be multiple. Come on,
Okay.
Russ.
I'll
These
buy it.
things are not related.
I might not.
Okay. What do you think of the code doing for this? Because even if she's not sensing the coolness of the handlebars, she's definitely like pushing the bike, experiencing that.
Well, I would be happy to make a category about that, but I wouldn't be happy to call it doing, because doing for me is a technical term that means I'm doing something that is not otherwise usually being done. So, for example, if I am particularly zeroed in on the blue of my computer screen, and it's not just that I'm captured by the blue of the computer screen, but I am specifically looking at the blue in order to see it as being blue. That's the doing of sensory awareness. That's not just sensory awareness, that's the doing of sensory awareness. So for me, that's doing is a technical term where I'm diddling in I'm interfering with the natural sensory awareness. I'm trying to create
Sometimes use a code like just doing, like
just doing.
I know you have like just watching TV or something. Yeah. Just doing. Yeah. Well, how would you describe, like you're performing an action?
An action, I would probably use action.
Action.
But for action, that's a really slippery slope category for me. There's almost always an action. You can always.
Yeah. But like we had a lot where she was running, but she didn't think the running was so.
Was part of the that's.
To me, this is like it's pretty clear that like pushing, angling the bike, whatever. Try not to hit the hands. Is experienced.
So we're going to make an action category, or should we have to go back and refine on?
Or do you think that's worth? I don't know if we need a category in the spreadsheet.
I agree that she's doing an action, whether it's ever an interesting category.
Yeah.
The people in my lab, for example, in a relative thing, the people in my lab want to have a category called perceptual awareness, which means I'm seeing something.
Yeah.
And I've argued, almost always there's some kind of perceptual awareness going on. If you're going to rate it here, you're going to rate it just about everywhere.
Yeah.
And it hasn't convinced my students mostly, but I put my foot down there and say, we're just not going to do that.